The agenda is on the board, kind of. Y'all. Thank you. Are there any motions regarding tonight's agenda? Yes.
Motion to approve.
The motion to approve made by Stefan, second by Claudia. Are there any objections? Yes. Oh, I need to change the thing. Yes.
But also, if the presenter's not here, I would like to take it off the agenda. Is that possible?
Okay. Yeah. We visited the. Is that how you like it fixed? Okay. So I have a objection by Alexandrina, which is that this the Porter College, this item was incorrectly labeled Porter College resolutions. It was written on behalf of Zoll instead of on behalf of Porter College. And then there's also been a recommendation to, if the presenter is not here for that agenda item, to take it off of the agenda tonight. So now we go into debate. If no one has debate, we can just re-vote. We don't need to call the question. Alright, seeing no debate, we're going to move into a vote, which is to amend the agenda as is, and then without the caveat of skipping the revisiting resolutions if the presenter is not there. Yes.
Re-clarify what?
Yeah. So there's two potential. There's the motion on the table is to approve the agenda as is, and then the objection to that was that a member of the space wanted to skip this last agenda item, the revisiting the resolutions, if the presenter wasn't there for that agenda item. Yes, second.
Motion to amend the main motion to be reflective of the changes previously discussed.
Okay. I have a motion to amend the main motion to reflect skipping the revisiting resolutions if Zolt isn't here. by David. Are there any objections? Seeing none, that amendment passes and becomes a main motion. Now, are there any objections to adopting the agenda with the caveat that using resolutions isn't going to happen until it's due? Seeing none, that item passes and we pass the next agenda. I'm putting the minutes up on the board. All those in favor of, wait, not, sorry, that's not what it is. Are there any motions regarding last week's minutes? Yes.
Motion to approve the agenda, or minutes.
I have a motion to approve last week's minutes made by David, second by Alexandrina. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. We'll now be moving into announcements and public comment. And I'll start taking staff for announcements and public comment. Anyone who has an announcement? David?
I'm going to be passing around Disability Student Meeting flyers as well as flyers for an event coming up on the 9th. It is a talk given by Professor Jay Dolmage, who's visiting to give us a talk. It's about academic ableism beyond accommodation at UC Santa Cruz. The disability rights scholar and recently published a book about academic ableism. It's really interesting. It's worth a read. It's available online for free. And I hope everyone can make it, especially those people seeking elected office next year. And I'll be passing those around.
Hey everyone, we will have our first budget committee tomorrow and in SUA office from 4 to 6, and we will really use the help. So please come if you have time. 4 to 6 in SUA office, PM.
Any more announcements or public comments? Yes, Aslan.
Just a reminder that the presentation for the Islam Awareness Month is tomorrow at the Al Lounge at 7 p.m. It is Islam 101. I'm going to meet Professor Yasmin Bengalon and talk about basic Islam. Both Muslim and non-Muslim are reading them by way of advice.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, I'd love to see you all there, but also please bring back your faces.
Okay, our presenter who gave me, presenter might be coming a little bit later for this Measure 73 endorsement. Are the presenters for the student worker protections agenda item here? Okay. In that case, we will be moving into SOFA, and I'm going to add the PowerPoint to that.
So here's the budget breakdown for the SOFA allocations. Yeah, definitely. Like, I only have 15 copies, so please share. And also, I want to thank you for everyone who came to the SOFA meeting. It was a big success, and it was dying of those without like your hard working.
Sorry to interrupt you all real quick. Seeing at this agenda, I did it recently, and I made a mistake on it. I had given us 5 minutes for SOFA. I intended for that to be 15. Is everyone okay if I just kind of move everything 10 minutes back? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Can we open the PowerPoint?
Yes. Yeah.
And also, I'm so sorry about in the copies that I somehow misprinted first name, first letter for every document.
I'm just pulling up a PowerPoint real quick, and that's the reason for the.
And in the PowerPoint is the amounts they asking for, and also the amounts the SUA meeting recommended.
It's what? What about? Oh my god. Yeah, maybe they could. As long as they do there, I'm okay. All the pictures are. Yeah. So just, I might put them on Google Drive and share it with everybody. I'm sorry? I might make a Google Drive folder and just have them there and share it with all of them. Oh, cool. Oh my god, look at here's the picture. I don't make it.
My mom. My kids are together.
So I clear text. So at this point, there's a PowerPoint in the agenda file that I shared with you all tonight. And that PowerPoint will have the amounts people ask for and also the amounts we recommend.
With that, and Raphael can present the PowerPoint that looks ideally.
Oh my god, don't tell me that's me.
That is the.
Oh my god.
It's just a
Oh my god.
Lauren, it can't hurt you, Lauren.
That's fine.
What?
You're fine. Fine. You're not gonna.
What? No, but those kind of things. There's no mistakes.
I'll come back.
Lauren, Johnny's gonna be with them and they're
Numbers like way too small.
You'll have to like or just make the font
Oh, that thing actually
Just not do anything. And also like since you are 3 5.
So they don't fight, they don't do that.
Can y'all make that for your attention? Thank you. Alright, what's up y'all? So it's not gonna be like a real presentation, but I'm just gonna announce the recommendation that we made up like from the SUA meeting last Friday. Thank you all for hard working in SUA. And here's the organization names, the event and their time, and the amount they request, and also the amount we recommended. And please be noticed like for this one, the Matchbox. We didn't really want to like fund in any amount because like their event is next year, June. Like 2020 June somehow, but they're applying for this year because they want to get some money they can save and like, use it next year. But we decided probably we should save those money for some organizations they probably in like more urgent case. If y'all cannot really like see the number or something, it's already in the file that I shared with y'all tonight. So you can also print it, like open it up. Next slide. What? Next one. And every information is on here. And also like this sheet.
Does anyone have any questions about the SUA recommendations for this this first SUA meeting?
Rafael, could you remind us, I remember we set a certain amount of money that we were looking at like as our limit for how much we could spend, and I remember that we were short of that number by a certain amount. Do you remember how much we saved?
$3,900.
Any, Lauren?
So with Matchbox, I just had a question about their funding request. With Matchbox, if it says June 2020, does that imply that they are printing at that time or distributing? Because if they were distributing, then they would need the funding prior to that date.
They present they're gonna have the event next year, but they're like asking for funds so they can kind of like save it and then use it next year. So they're not really like gonna use it this year or quarter.
Sit well.
It wasn't an event, it was printing, yeah, but they weren't gonna start printing until next year. They specifically said that they were just getting funds to like save for next year.
Okay, thank you.
So walking away, yeah.
What was the total amount that, SUA had to spend?
I've been with or just
Okay.
ginseng.
About 17,000.
For this SUA meeting or for both SUA meetings?
For both sides.
Okay, so you would like to write that in?
So usually, organizations stop asking for funds generally for this quarter of SUA around week 5-ish. So we just kind of like appropriated more funds for this SOFA because the next SOFA we currently only have one organization who's currently ready to present, and this past SOFA we only had 9 organizations. So we're pretty much preparing to have like very little organizations ask. And also there's a little bit of funds coming in from carry forward from different organizations who didn't use funds for fall quarter as well as summer. So there's still an excess amount of funds that are going to be coming into the SOFA budget.
Okay, so, we have a good amount of funds.
Yes.
Okay, so, are we discussing the recommendations right now, or is this like just general questions?
No, it's just general questions about it, and then y'all are going to take it back to your spaces, and then we're going to vote on them next week. But I believe there was one organization, if any of the SOFA peeps can remember, which one was it?
So in addition to just I just want to like so people don't get confused. I'm going to be answering your question and be saying something. It was the Indian Student Association, I believe, and they came and asked for 5,000 because of our own internal cap. We only allocated 4,000. However, I also think it would be very appropriate to discuss this event. There's a lot of feeling within the space that I was at least very struck by the fact that in past years they've had massive turnout. This is one of the largest, if not the largest event on campus. They are already like cutting it down to like the last possible moment in order to be able to have this happen. So I think that the space should very seriously consider funding them tonight. And I think that the space should also very much consider funding them the additional $1,000 that they asked, since we as as the SUA aren't limited to that cap that SOFA set for itself. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Since the cap is strictly within SOFA, and SOFA just gives recommendations and doesn't actually like allocate the funding, can we just allocate more to them now instead of doing all recommendations?
Next week, unless we're voting on this page.
I'm curious, how much of their funding has already been filled? Like, assets, like how much do they, like I was looking at the document, $18,000 in total, how much do they have there?
I can respond. Last time we gave them, I think, $499.05 and something cents. They asked for $8,000, $8,500, I believe. Yeah, so they don't have.
So they have no other sources?
They said that they used pretty much all of these division after that. And I wanted to respond to Aya's question. With ISA that we discussed, getting funding out because their event coming up in short notice and they have to book everything. So we were discussing about spending the bylaws and building.
Is yes, Steve?
I just wanted to also add that that there was a lot of discussion about whether ISA does sufficient fundraising. There were discussion about whether they should be charging admittance or asking for donations. If they ask for a $1 to $5 sliding scale and based on need donation, that with 4,000 or 5,000 attendees, they would easily be able to cover their costs. Personally, I felt very much like we should fund them, and tonight I feel like we should fund them because this is an important event. But I individually am currently working on an email to ISA saying that because they have so much potential to do fundraising within SOFA next year, if I keep my seat, I won't be voting to fund them again unless they undertake fundraising measures. That being said, I don't think our standard should be unless you've jumped through all the hoops that we want you to, we won't fund you unless you jump through the hoops that we set.
Yes, thank you.
I agree that ISA has a lot of capability to do funding, but I also don't think it's fair to start that standard now and then enforce that standard only on ISA when that standard hasn't been enforced for any other organization throughout the year, even though some of those organizations have giant funding, giant backing, like I would say even greater than, much greater than ISA's. So if we're going to do something like this, it cannot be this year, it has to be next year, and it has to be standardized starting next year. Not just to ISA, but any other club that also has giant funding has capability for like that. And I feel like just general requirements would not be enough for that. We need something written. I don't know if we need to amend the Constitution some way, but I don't think that's fair to even bring that up for ISA right now because it's unfair to give them that burden. And we haven't given that burden to anyone else, regardless of whether they have the capability or not.
Are we able to make a motion to fund at this moment? Do we need to suspend bylaw?
The second bylaw that I'm getting right now, I would like to speak.
I was just going to do a bylaw, so well, you can do a bylaw.
Yeah. I had you on step.
Oh,
You
I was going to suspend the bylaw.
Oh. Oh. Yeah. That's, you literally just said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Zach,
Yes. What was that?
Can I see?
Yes, yeah, go for it.
Okay. I just want to say that the reason why ISA specifically are the ones that we've been saying need to fundraise is because they're the only ones who come in here asking for more than $8,000 in funding every single year. And it's just such a large chunk of our money. And during the presentation at SOFA too, they basically said oh, we weren't expecting to get less than $8,000 from SUA. And so they're just relying on us for $8,000 a year at this point. And even if they got a $1 donation from every person who went to this event, that would be $10,000. So it's just really ridiculous. And the thing is it's not targeted to ISA because right now we kind of have a funding cap in SOFA of we don't want to fund a single organization more than $4,000. And so that's not, we don't want to fund ISA more than $4,000. we don't want to fund anyone more than $4,000. And we've already given ISA like $1 shy of $5,000. So then when you add on to this money onto that, it's going to be like $1 shy of $9,000. And so that's why David brought up the point of like ISA really needs to start fundraising. And fundraising could again be like literally just at the door, well, gate for Holly, be like, hey, if you want this to happen again next year, consider donating like $1 to $5, but like we're not going to turn anyone away if you don't have money to donate for entry. So yeah, it's just I don't think that we should be funding awards more than $4,000. So that's why. And so if we made a rule about it, it wouldn't be ISA can't do this without fundraising. It would be if you want to ask for more than $4,000, you have to show that you fundraised like a significant amount of money too, and that you're not just asking us for like everything.
Okay. I have the three of you on staff. I'm gonna revisit who's trying to suspend the bylaw, and then I will have you on staff for the new motion. Okay.
Motion to suspend bylaw section F4B4E2.
I have a motion by Io to suspend bylaw F4B4E2, seconded by Venkatesh. Are there any objections?
Point of information, so is this going to be just for ISA or for the whole civil budget?
That's a great question. So it's usually for the agenda item.
Okay.
So we can decide what we want to pass this week, and what we want to take back to our spaces. Yeah.
So this, if this motion were to pass, then we can individually say ISA is the exception and everything else will have to go back in space next week, right?
Yes. Okay. I'm seeing no objections. We have suspended the bylaw. That stipulates that we need to wait a week after being presented with the certain recommendations to vote on them. Cameron, I heard you next.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that last year we funded a lot of organizations more than $4,000. I don't want to make, like, I understand the notion that we want to make people fundraise, but people already like try and do that themselves. Last year we funded Blackout 13,000. We funded NSB, I think 5 or 10,000, something along those lines. There were a lot of orgs that we funded that were asking for more than $4,000, and we funded them completely. I just think this is a unique year, and that's why we're strapped for funds. And I don't think we should be making like institutional decisions like that based on this one outlier.
I just wanted to say that we shouldn't say that they should be wrong to say that they will be getting $8,000 because they've been getting $8,000 in estimate for 2 years. So I think it makes sense why they have that assumption that they'll get $8,000 again. And I did talk to the Irish representatives about fundraising, and they did like agree to do want to push that, but they also already have been fundraising in the quarry. They sell namelessly in charge, so they have been like trying to that. As long as they're not using.
Thank you.
Reserve my right to motion before that. I'm just gonna go over previous speakers. I also don't think something like this idea of putting a restriction on funding is kind of gigantic and would change the way SOFA would work. And I think that needs to be more than just, hey, we are looking at ISA, that's one specific case. If we're gonna do that, we're gonna have to look at multiple cases and have that in official writing with correct and good vocabulary that all of us can understand and agree to, and that can't be enforced now. That's just not fair to ISA. And there are clubs that we have funded more than $5,000, so I just don't think it's fair to do that to ISA specifically, because for some reason there's this idea that ISA doesn't fundraise at all, or even if they do, it's insufficient. They have their own ways, and we can only make recommendations to clubs. It's not our job to tell clubs you have to do this for them to ask money, because that would change the way a lot of clubs will operate anyway. Based on that, I'm gonna motion to fund the ISA $5,000 too.
I have a motion to fund ISA $5,000 with Venkatesh, seconded by David, out of Spring SOFA.
Yeah.
Out of Spring SOFA money. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the motion passes. We funded ISA 5,000 out of Spring SOFA. We have a little bit more time on this agenda item. Usually,
just because since we do have a good chunk of funding, and we wouldn't want leftover funding because that just looks like we didn't allocate our money wisely, I would just want you all to consider that the recommendation was lower than what we asked for. And I was looking a little bit at the meeting notes from the SOFA, and I wanted to go over some of the concerns. So one of the concerns was that the budget was a range, and it's a range for many different reasons for like the panelists who are the queer, brown, trans panelists that are going to be talking about sustainability. This is a range because it's still up in the air whether the money that we get from the sustainability office will apply, because we might do like a dual event with the sustainability office. And also the food, depending on how much money we get, we might not buy as many like drinks, or we might not buy as many appetizers. So those were the two things that had ranges. And then also another concern by SOFA was it was stated that there were other sources that we can ask for, but the zero waste scheme, half of our budget is already going to this event, and that's $750. So half our budget is already dedicated to this event. Other than that, SUA was really our biggest funding body to give like these panelists money to express their knowledge and share, and like have other people that have similar identities see themselves in the work of sustainability. Sorry for all of that, and if you didn't follow along, but just wanted to express that like, you should really share out with your spaces and consider funding the full amount. Thanks.
okay. We are out of time on this agenda item. I have two people on Steve, yes. I have a motion to extend time by 3 minutes made by Aslan, seconded by Emma. Are there any objections? Yes, so I'll place the objection.
No, the only reason I was on staff was to motion to table this agenda item, so if that's like part of why people want to extend time, that's like.
Alright, this isn't a debatable motion, so we move it to a vote. All those in favor of extending time by 3 minutes, please raise your hand. I have 5 in favor. All those opposed? I have 14 opposed. The motion doesn't pass, and we'll be moving on to the next agenda item. Next is student worker protections presentation here. Okay. Okay. So now we're on to student worker, yes?
Do I know we're meeting here?
Yes.
Okay.
Alright, I will be presenting this agenda item.
Okay, y'all. Hey, so in the beginning of winter quarter, I talked about the SUA playing a larger role in being more based off of specific issues that are happening on campus and not just funding. And then at the beginning of spring quarter, we successfully removed funding from SUA conversations during assembly meetings so that we could focus more on specific issues that are happening on campus. And so we'll take it 1 week at a time. Next week, we're going to start talking more about the House of Students and talking about what the next steps are going to be for SUA. But this week, we're going to talk about the Committee on Student Worker Protections, or as some student leaders like to call it, the Labor Commission. And basically, this idea is to be able to establish a labor commission, which would be an extension of the SUA, which its job is to basically advocate for student workers and also like be able to like send resolutions on behalf of of students who are working directly with ASME workers. Obviously it's been 2.5 years since our ASME workers have been able to sign a contract. I actually just left. I just got back from a meeting with Janet Napolitano and the UC Council of Student Body Presidents, and we talked about where we are at with the ASME contracts. And basically, long story short, we are in the exact same place that we were 2 years ago. So there's been no movement whatsoever. So now, obviously, to be able to get more traction on these issues, we need more student support, which means that we need to be able to institutionalize students that are already doing work off campus, or already doing the work in other areas like WISC, Worker Student Solidarity Coalition. They organize a lot of the ASME strikes. They make sure that students are a part of the entire process of this. And so the idea is to be, basically they're supposed to come and just present about the foundation of the reason why they want to create a labor commission. And then next week they're going to be introducing new bylaws to the SUA that we're going to be talking about the week after to see what the prospects are of being able to institutionalize a labor commission in this body. So very short, the labor commission will be able to release statements on behalf of the SUA that is specifically directly concerning student worker protections or ASME worker protections. They'll be able to book their flights and all the things that they need for their conferences, usually under the EVP office, so then we'll be able to institutionalize that process as well. They'll be able to table and flyer and basically just build as much awareness about the conditions of workers and student workers, obviously, to the general body. So the resolution that you see in the drive is, I believe, was the establishment of a labor commission in either UC Davis or UC St. Cruz. I'm sorry, or UC, oh, I was UC Berkeley. UC Davis has a labor commission, Berkeley has a labor commission, I believe LA has a labor commission. All these other UCs have labor commissions that really focus on these issues, and we want to make sure that we are advocating as much as possible. So this is, again, this presentation to give you all a little bit of context about the reason why we are wanting to establish this. So that way next week we can start talking about the actual bylaws that we're going to be presenting. But for now, does anyone have any questions about this, about the intention of this creation, or about the optics of everything? Yeah.
Matt?
Go ahead.
Will it be possible to see a copy of the verbatim bylaws before they're presented to the space?
So they're the ones it's complicated because they're making the draft, they're going to send it to me, I'm going to read over it, review it, change some things, send it to them. So it depends. According to the bylaws, the SUA bylaws, we wouldn't have to present the actual bylaw change until the week before the SUA. Right. So we will try to get it out before Tuesday, but if they finish on like Monday night, then yeah. But as soon as we get the final copy, we'll send it out to the SUA.
Are we voting on this resolution next week?
No, they're going to be. There's no resolution right now. We're just laying the foundation of the conversation for next week and the week after.
Yes.
Can you offer for them to come into Vision Committee if they want some support
Oh.
with amendment writing or resolution writing?
Thank you.
Great. Just to clarify, this isn't something we're voting on next week, but it's something we're discussing next week. Cool. Any more questions? Okay. Next on. Next, we address the SUA accessibility bylaw amendments.
Is it shared in the?
I believe it's shared in last week's folder because there's new documents up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We need to change it last week.
I remember I shared it with you.
Okay.
So this should be shared in the drive. I have a few printed copies if you all would like to take a look, but I only printed 6, I believe, since printing is expensive. These are 2 separate bylaws, both aimed to increase the accessibility of this space. I think that persons with disabilities where you have any sort of issue with audio comprehension, or if you have a visual impairment, are both impacted during the announcement period during meetings. My disabilities don't severely impact those areas, but I know that I've had to ask for clarification on certain events, certain items multiple times, and I can't imagine what that would be like for someone whose disabilities did severely impact that area. I know that members before have had trouble seeing announcements when they're thrown up there, and I think they just fundamentally there is an issue of accessibility here that could very easily be addressed. So the first bylaw amendment, which is amend the SUA bylaws to include section C8A2, which will read.
My personal privilege, it's not in the folder.
Should be.
Yeah, I have it, it's over, so. Refresh.
I think just refresh.
Sorry, thank you.
So what this bylaw does is it requires that if someone is making an announcement, the announcement has to be made in an accessible format. I struggled to try to figure out what the best way to do this was, because on one hand you want people to be able to make announcements on a very shorthand basis. On the other hand, if there isn't an effort to make announcements accessible, they're just not accessible. So what this does is it requires that if you're going to make an announcement, you have to submit a digital flyer to be put in the folder, or you have to bring paper flyers, for instance, the flyers that I passed out today. If you're doing it digitally, you have to do it 12 hours in advance so that there's time for the parliamentarian to put it in the drive, and they're not like sitting at their computer 5 minutes before the meeting waiting for you to send it in. Any announcement that fails to meet this requirement, someone can make a point of order and stop your announcement, and the parliamentarian would also be empowered to do that because it's not being made in an accessible format. And we fundamentally in this space believe in accessibility and non-discrimination. It also, because there are going to be announcements that are made by people who aren't aware of this requirement, this bylaw requires the SUA members to inform people if they know that there's an announcement coming of this requirement. There also is concern, I acknowledge, that people who are coming from outside of the space would not be aware of this requirement and therefore be unable to make this announcement. And I would say that we should engage in a public information campaign so that anyone coming into the space is aware of that requirement. However, I would also say that there's no other area of where we look at discrimination and non-discrimination measures that can be made to make non-discrimination possible. There's no other area where we're like, yeah, I mean, being accessible would be nice, but I really want to talk. I mean, this is like, I think that argument is completely ridiculous because it's just so catastrophically unequally applied. It's only something that you hear about accessibility arguments. The second thing that this bylaw does is it means that anyone who's making an announcement or providing information, policy update, soliciting feedback, anything like that, if you're an officer, if you're presenting on behalf of an SUA committee or SUA staff, you have to do the same sort of thing, either digital, 12 hours in advance, or a flyer at the meeting. And again, any announcement that fails to meet that requirement is after. The second bylaw, which I just want to be clear, these are 2 separate items. The second thing requires that interviewees be provided their questions no later than 2 business days prior to the interview. During the last meeting, I raised the point of how interviews are often inaccessible if the questions are not provided in advance, and I also argue that there isn't really any point in why the person who's able to, on their feet, be able on the spot, be able to respond to an interview question is necessarily more qualified than the person who is able to think that. We can look at how disabilities impact a person's ability to do well in an interview when they don't have access to the questions beforehand. Someone who has processing speed issues, which mean that they're just as capable of doing anything else that anyone else is able to do, but because their brain in certain areas doesn't go as fast as other people's brains or isn't able to do the same computations in the same speed, they might have their interview performance impacted by the fact that they weren't able to think about their questions beforehand. We also have all sorts of issues like visibility. Are they able to read the questions off the board? Are they able to understand the questions when they're read to them? I think that fundamentally in all of these areas, the person is still able to perform their job. It's just the interview format unfairly impacts them, and the enforcement mechanism for this bylaw is that if we make a decision without having provided the interview questions 2 days in advance, our decision doesn't count. I would also say that although I recognize that people might say, well, 2 business days is quite a bit of time, why not only give 30 minutes? What if someone has a class that's 10 minutes before? Now, then they arrive late and they are given a disadvantage because they only have 10 minutes to look at the questions, whereas everyone else had 30 minutes. You might say, well, why not give a day? Well, imagine that we have imagine that they have classes all Monday. This is about allowing the interviewee to perform their best, to present their best self. And I think that it's unfair for the space to sort of have this standard of, you have to have the time right beforehand made available to prepare these questions, when it would be so easy for us to just provide them a little bit more in advance and skirt all these questions of, all right, are only people with schedules that don't have classes right before SUA able to apply for certain positions? I think that neither of these items is especially controversial, and I don't really think that I don't see a reason why any particular space would have an objection to this. This is a basic matter of civil rights, so I urge the space to adopt these 2 bylaw changes today.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so my questions are pretty much directed at the interview ones. It says amending the section C so that I shall meet this. What is the current?
There is nothing.
There's nothing?
Yeah. So we currently have C 1 through 18, and this just adds C 1 through.
Okay, and then second, you're saying to give the interviewers or the interviewees the questions 2 days prior, but honestly, I don't really like that proposition. I feel like it should be more like if you go to a job interview, they don't give you the questions 2 days beforehand. Pretty much, it'll just lead to pretty much scripted answers, and quite frankly, they should have to at least think of, they shouldn't have their entire speech scripted before they walk in the room.
So,
Yeah,
so I think that off of the standards that employers are keeping, workplace discrimination is rife in every single area if you look at any sort of intersectional identity. And the fact that most employers don't provide questions in advance shouldn't be the reason that we as a body pride ourselves on being more understanding, more accessible, should not adopt this. I'd also say that yes, you do have a risk of scripted questions. There's really nothing that you can do to avoid that. But I would ask, I spent 2 years doing competitive debate on a rigorous level. I believe that that training gives me an exceptionally high ability to answer questions off the cuff. I got through dozens of debates because I could bullshit on the spot. That doesn't mean that I would be a good elections commissioner. It has nothing to do with whether I would be a good employee in any capacity. In fact, it would probably indicate I would be a bad employee because I'm good at just making stuff up. On the other hand, I think that someone who really takes time and thinks about what their answer is, that reflects a higher level of professionalism and a higher level of potential employability. And again, I just bring it back to the question of accessibility. Is having questions asked at the moment accessible? Are you assessing someone's ability to fulfill their position, or are you assessing their ability to process information in a certain format? And you.
Jessica?
Okay, I think providing questions before has helped me a lot during this. In my last interview, they provided questions before, and as someone that doesn't have a visible disability, that helped me so much. And also, I think it just sets a standard of it doesn't give people access if their auditory learning is a lot better than if it's said verbally, if that makes sense. Seeing it visually also helps a lot. And also, I prepare for the questions anyways. Seriously, my answers are scripted if I don't get the questions, because that's how I prepare for interviews. I make up mock questions. So even if we didn't provide it, they probably still are scripted answers, just because that's how basic interview like prep goes, like we do strict scenarios and questions and answers, and this is just one more step towards accessibility, so yeah.
Lauren?
I will say in regards to a previous speaker that I have conducted interviews within Cal College and other areas where they provided questions in advance. I would also encourage not only doing that, but providing questions on paper, because that can also help make it more accessible than just seeing it on a screen. That sometimes is difficult to read even for people who might, have 20/20 vision or something like that.
Deva?
In regards to last week's interview, I think beyond just different age or disability, I think there's also language and cultural boundaries that were very, very obvious last week. I think that's where I'm kind of focusing on at this point. I don't know where to put this, but I also think I don't make the assumption that someone doesn't know English, because obviously if they're here to use the system, there's a test that you need to pass for a certain English proficiency here. But I also think I'm in that mindset where I don't know politically correct or not to say it, but to reach out to folks and ask them, you can provide a language translation for them. Because I think that's where I'm also at, where I also think that that's a real thing, where I feel a lot of folks just so yeah, I don't know what, I'll say two things. One, the language and cultural boundaries are definitely there for obvious reasons. A lot of folks can't process a second language as fast as the rest of us can. If we're raised to speak English, we can process a lot faster than most people can who are not native speakers. So that's definitely one thing I think that also should be included as in translations. And the second thing to it, I will also say from an interviewer standpoint, I never want the questions to get out of the space. I think that presents an issue for future interviewing. And so I don't know if releasing those questions out can provide that issue. So I definitely like to, if I have these questions for you, they're not supposed to end up getting somewhere else and for someone else to kind of have access to them. That's also an issue with releasing them a couple days early. Besides that, it's not my only issue with that. Other than that, I do support what you're saying though.
Yeah, so to just be as efficient as possible and consistent with the conversation, I think that 3 things should happen next. Thing number 1, once everyone's done with their comments, take it back to your spaces. Obviously, there's conversations that need to be had. I have a kind of a philosophy when it comes to bylaw amendments and suspensions and all that kind of stuff. If it has to do with something as lighter, like in terms of something or something that helps an organization or helps something that's in need currently right now, then I would always recommend that we do some kind of bylaw suspension. But given that about 5 to 6 chairs of college governments have complained to me for weeks that SUA suspends too much and that they don't come back to the college governments enough, I want to make sure that we are, ensuring that we have that democratic process. So I think that this is a great bylaw. I think that it would be greater if we had a larger conversation and see how many more ideas we can include into this. I also want to see if y'all are open to basically looking at community agreements and seeing how we can improve those to make it more disabled friendly. But yeah, I would say go to your spaces and we'll come back next week so that we can really have a conversation. But I really want to make sure that we get through all the agenda items and don't stay here too long.
Thank you.
I actually also agree with this bylaw. I think it's really cool and I think it's accessible. But I also do have a concern with making it just script. I am concerned about scripted answers. So I just want to think I'm not really sure how this interview process would go down, but I think one way to make it more efficient and maybe more accessible as well is instead of having straight up questions, we have topics of discussion that we get with example questions, so that interviewers, candidates can prepare themselves, and they won't have to just that way we're also testing their knowledge as well as avoiding scripted answers. I feel that also makes it accessible because they know what to expect and they're not being tested on comprehension right then and there because they have time to prepare, as well as they test their knowledge in a more comprehensive way.
Yeah, so I wanted to remind everyone that we're gonna vote on this next week. So we don't really need to debate it right now. Usually at this time we would probably ask questions about bylaws, suggest changes. and then we would bring it back to our spaces, and based on what they say, that's how it should affect our votes. So, I don't know, I think that we should move on from this topic, and thanks David for taking the time to think about that. But I'm not gonna make a motion because I'm sure there are other people to say.
Chase?
Yep.
David?
I'll just say that a few things. One, I was reminded that the Constitution prohibits us from amending the bylaws without that week requirement, so that's a weak point. Second thing is, I'd say that it's very important to me that we keep this within the narrow confines that I've established. If you want to create a different language bylaw, I urge you to do so. This didn't take me that long to do. If you wanted to restructure the interview process, I encourage you to do that. However, my job is to represent my constituents and students with disabilities who comprise 12% of the student body. My job is not to ensure that all languages or every single aspect of the interview process is done in the best way. What this bylaw does is it aims to prevent discrimination based on disability from continuing to happen within the space. It aims to try to make the space an accessible one, and as such, I think that everything that we add onto this makes it so that we're moving beyond that. Anyone can choose a bylaw amendment, and I urge you to do so. That being said, I will not be willingly accepting any major modifications to this because my intent is to make the space accessible for my constituents. My intent is to do that as quickly as possible because every week that we spend thinking, well, how can we restructure this? How can we restructure that? Really puts in jeopardy our ability to be accessible during that week. I'd also say that recently the SUA, I think, showed a abundant lack of ability to critically engage with ideas. And that I did not see any evidence that the space has interest in engaging in a thorough drafting and redrafting process. That being said, if someone wants to produce another bylaw, I urge you to do so. But until I am shown signs that we're going to consider a much more in-depth bylaw, my extreme preference is to write something which is simple, straightforward, and addresses the problem that it's trying to address, instead of trying to tackle 12 different things and then run into a situation where there's an issue with one of those things, one person has an issue, and then all of a sudden, all of these things that we're trying to do to make the space more accessible are thrown out the window because there was an issue with a single element that someone had to draft without any other assistance or input from other people, and just based on inferences based on, well, I think that this would be a good idea, I think that would be a good idea. So in conclusion, I would urge everyone to next week adopt this as is because it's a critical step into making this space accessible. If you want to do something else, great, but don't endanger this ability of this space to be accessible in the meantime.
I know you just gave a good speech about not changing it, but I just had a question about why you talked about why you chose 2 business days instead of 1 or the day of. Why didn't you consider a week before? Because I know we vote on the interview questions the week before the interview, so why didn't you consider that?
Honestly, my fear was just that the concerns about scripted questions would become even more severe. I also thought they would represent poison pill for the space, that people would be unlikely to accept 2 days, let alone.
What was that?
Can I do a direct response to that?
Yes.
Okay, the thing is, I know the job, just because we picked the interview questions doesn't mean that the job listing is closed. So in order for fair hiring, for this to be okay, we have to give it to everyone at the same time. So a week before might be before the job closes and then someone else can apply later. So 2 business days is just a lot easier with regard to being able to give people as much time as possible to apply and not lowering that amount of time because we want to be able to give them the questions they have.
David, I apologize for not giving you the attention you deserve. I was communicating with the presenter. Can you restate for me this whole thing about not changing it?
Oh yeah, I'll try to do it more briefly than I did. I think that everything that we add onto this creates increased complexity. Quite frankly, it creates more work for me. My goal is to address the accessibility issues which I saw, and I don't think that there's any benefit to bundling that with a bunch of other changes. If people want to make their own changes, they're welcome to do so. But this is a matter of making this space successful, and every week that we fail to adopt this is a week that we go on being less accessible than we could be. So unless people bring, like, you know, we cannot make, if someone introduces a change, that delays this by a week. That means that we continue to be unaccessible or less accessible for a week. So I want to implement this as is, and so.
At least 6 from each college, just in case, just to make sure that one of those signatures aren't invalid and then you cannot run. It happened last year, one person was missing 1 signature from Powell College, and then that ended their entire campaign. They could not run officially on the ballot. So just make sure that you have all the information. I'm going to pass it on to Zach, because I think he has additional updates to say. But just keep in mind that it's closing next week, May 1st, Wednesday, which is also my birthday, but it's okay. So make sure you, if you're interested in any officer position, please feel free to come to any of the current officers. If anyone's interested in any position whatsoever, like, please reach out. So,
Did y'all hear something?
So Regina and I, this might not be what happens, but some sort of food, another food for voting event on that Monday. We set aside some times that we'll be hosting these events. We have yet to figure out the location. And we may be coming to you all next week with a budget request, given the quotes that we get over this next week. I think this is basically it. There's 3,000, but it might not be enough, so we can always come up with requests and it might need more. Do you want to say anything while I pull these up? Yes.
So I have 2 things. One, as a former candidate from last year, can you make sure there is some type of communication between you and CHP? They tried to schedule a debate on Thursday, which is like almost every other organization that's not SUA meets. So essentially, yeah, if SUA meets on Tuesday, ethnic orgs and synods meet on Thursdays and Mondays, it only leaves you and CHP with a Wednesday and a Friday to do that type of stuff. And so last year, it took all of the college synods to email CHP saying you cannot schedule a debate on Thursday because that's when all of us meet. And so I don't want that to happen to anybody again this year. So make sure there's communication between y'all and CHP so they're not scheduling the same debate on the same day. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, the second thing, which I explained to Aya, but I should probably make it clear to all folks in this room. So the election packet says voting is the 13th to 20th. The elections website says the 15th to 22nd. So it really needs to be cleared up immediately. When I mean immediately, it can be as soon as possible because it closes next Wednesday. And so the election packet and the website say 2 different things. That's probably the worst thing you ever want to happen. So if y'all can make sure that's cleared up soon, it would be really great. I appreciate it.
We also have another really important thing to clear up. The elections email was wrong in the elections packet. So it is not elections SUA at UCSC.edu, it is election at UCSC.edu. So it's ELECTION at UCSC.edu. And I can write that on the agenda or something so y'all have it. Yeah. We both tried to email the elections SUA and then tried to log into it. You can email or log into it, but we could email and log into election at UCSC.edu.
With that being said, I would suggest coordinating with Iowa to send a campus-wide email to all candidates that they know that, because these are things that you just can't update, tell us because we're not every candidate, so that needs to be a campus-wide email that's sent out, and yeah.
Thank you.
Just want to add one more thing. Y'all, please, do your job, y'all. Go to your spaces and ask for a representative to sit on the elections commission. Your governments are supposed to elect a person, so please find somebody. We need the elections commission as soon as possible so Regina can get to what she needs to do. So please have those names submitted and finalized by next week's meeting. Next week Tuesday is the cutoff. Please have a name by next week Tuesday. If you can't have a permanent name, that's fine. Elect someone temporary who can fill it until you have a permanent person. All right? Chase?
Are you sending out an email, or will the chairs know, or will they not know unless we ask them?
Once I'm done coordinating and doing the orientation for Regina, she will send out the email.
Okay.
Regina and I are working on the email this week. Okay, so Do you all want to hear when we plan to have these elections events? Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you more information? Oh, okay, go for it.
So the candidate orientations, we decided to have 3 dates for it, just in case people couldn't make one of them. So the first one is gonna be Thursday, May 2nd, from 5 to 7:30. Location TBD, we'll let you know as soon as we have the information. It'll either be in the Bay Tree conference rooms or in SUA office. We also have one Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. And Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. So yeah, those are mandatory orientations. You only need to come to one. We just had multiple times. Because we don't know who's running yet, so we're not going to be able to send out a whole like 1 day's notice because the deadline is May 1st, and then we need to have the candidate orientations between May 2nd and May 5th. So that doesn't give us any time to coordinate with people. So we just held multiple dates. The debate right now is scheduled for Monday, May 13th. So the same day that voting opens. So people will be able to vote as they're in the debate room, supposedly. And then the ice cream thing, which is like, come meet the candidates and also get ice cream, is Thursday, May 9th from 4 to 7 p.m. And that's all we have that's like scheduled like for sure. And we're working on like the tacos if you voted thing, and also like cookies if you come and vote thing, and a bunch of other tabling events.
So I know that was mentioned that Monday is not a good night. We were trying to do Monday early, like Monday at 5.
So here's the thing, I cannot speak for the Senate, but I'm aware that 4 meet on Monday, 6 meet on Thursday, along with 4 other ethnic boards. So you would probably want to avoid any Monday or Thursday night.
Okay.
So if you could do anything before 8 o'clock, which is most of those boards meet, that'd be a recommendation. Because that put like every candidate out of whack last year. So just make sure you just know when the Senate meet, because that would be a bad thing.
Okay.
But then there's also problems with people at evening classes. There's just a lot to go through. You can probably reach out to the pastors' elections commissioner and check. And there's a reason why they started at 7 o'clock last year rather than 5, because they were like to have a 5 o'clock class and 7 o'clock class. And it is what it is.
Any other points on this elections update? Okay. In that case, we'll be moving on to the next agenda item. Is Zoe here?
No.
Okay. In that case, we'll be viewing our closing remarks and agenda.
Before we do that, I want to comment about that, or do
The
you
rules and
comment on that?
resolutions. We voted to have that
Okay. Is everybody clear about the conflict and miscommunication and all that with the Porter resolution? That's not Porter? Yeah, we're all on the same page? Okay, cool. It's hard to navigate this kind of conversation, especially, and I do not want to even get into this because the representative is not here. But I take it very serious when, and I'm not claiming that anyone did anything, I'm just saying in general, if you want to pass something or if you want to, create an influence and use the SUA voice to make some change on campus-wide, just make sure that it's accurate, that whoever you're representing is who you're representing. If in fact you misrepresent somebody in some way, to some shape or some degree, that's a big offense. And I would take that very, very seriously, and we will talk about what those next steps look like. But just be aware that that honesty and integrity is something that the SUA, if not has, will have, and it's something that we need to uphold as the student leaders and servant leaders of our campus and our constituents. So just continue to remember that. Again, not making any statements, not saying anything, just saying, please continue that, and let's make sure that we're holding each other accountable and we're holding each other to the highest and the best of ourselves, all right?
Any fellow?
Sorry, I wasn't here for announcements, but I'll also send us an email. Just a few things. One, SU Food Pantry is opening up next Monday. Our regular hours will start again, 12 to 6 every day. Again, I'm sending this in email, so if you're not getting it right now, don't worry, you can have it for your report back. Additionally, I sent out a student life survey over in the Dean of Students email. So if you look in your previous emails from yesterday, you should see at the very bottom where it says student life survey. If you can fill that out or have your Senate spaces fill it out, any spaces that you affiliate yourself with, it'd be very much appreciated, especially since a lot happened this year. And I think hearing a lot of your feedback would be very helpful in understanding how we can improve the SUA for next year. And it says student life survey, however, it's student life survey, but it's for the overall SUA, so it's not just for my office. Additionally, I started the wellness program. I touched upon it briefly last time, however, now it actually has started, so the wellness program will be starting, and we are taking applications currently. They can help you with advising. We're a non-legal, non-partisan program that literally helps you with anything as far as financial aid or basic needs goes, and helping you just move or get around all the bureaucratic processes on campus. So if you or any of your friends or anybody that is dealing with some challenges with anything like food and housing, they can come our way and then they can fill out an application. That will also be in the email where you can get the link and you can fill it out too if you need to.
Sit low.
Yeah. So, my office is putting on an event tomorrow night in the Oaks Learning Center. It's called Strategic Dissent, How to Harness Student Power. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. And it's basically going to be a panel with 9 people who organize in the Santa Cruz community on campus and on campus, and have been able to secure changes. So it's basically if you want to learn how to organize, how to actually utilize your power and do more than just attend SUA meetings, this would be a really, really good forum. It's basically targeted towards students who want to get involved and don't know how to create change yet. So yeah, Oaks Learning Center, 7 to 9 p.m. It's going to be a bunch of cool people, both currently organizing and who are alumni talking. So please come. And there's going to be food from Falafel, I think, something like that.
That'll be a quick point.
Sorry, just one more thing. I don't know if this was touched on in announcements, but there's also a service recognition award being handed out by the Student Volunteer Center. It's not just for volunteers, but as student leaders, I know that a lot of y'all in the spaces give a lot of time and energy into your Senate, so you can be nominated for that. I'll also send you a link to that. That's it.
Hi.
Hey y'all, so like I mentioned earlier on today, I just got back from a meeting with President Fontano and the Council of Student League Presidents. I am not going to go through the full agenda, but if anyone would like me to officially present this next week, I can present all the updates, but I quickly want to do a 30-second run through, kind of just the overall conversation that happened. So we talked about care funding and the fact that it's going to be coming to an end really soon, and how UC President Fontana will be prioritizing care allocations so that we can continue to have these services on our campuses. And there's ongoing discussions about where those funding is going to come, where that funding is going to come from, and they're going to be following up with us in the coming months. We talk about anti-blackness and the UCPD accountability process. As y'all know, the UCPD, they just accepted a new policy recommendations, 20 recommendations, to help make it more clear and transparent. UCPD will be, there will be somebody called an RAO, and I can get you the acronym next week, who will be in charge of basically ensuring that all the implementations are done so effectively and transparently. And they'll be appointing a student who will be working with other students to coordinate feedback about how the police department can be better. We also talked about President Palatano meeting with Black student leaders across the UC regularly from now on, because we felt that it was important that we create that kind of pipeline, and that way Black students don't have to go through student government, but rather they can finally just have a face-to-face conversation with the person in charge and talk about the resources that they need. UC Santa Barbara recently, their chancellor recently agreed to, I believe it was a $500,000 contract with the Black students to be able to create a resource center on campus, a Black Student Development Center. And the BSU at UCLA, the BSU at UC Berkeley are all working to get their demands heard. So President Napolitano has made clear to me that she will be communicating with the Council of Chancellors to start talking about how they can institutionalize Black resource centers across the UCs. So those are going to be ongoing conversations happening. We talked about support for LGBTQ plus students and the importance of making sure that we have pronouns and their name that they want an actual record, and just ensuring that we're giving them the respect that they need. I found that UCLA has a committee on LGBTQ student rights. I thought it'd be really cool if UC Santa Cruz had something like that or something very similar. I know that under Enrique's office, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, he has a diversity commission. So I would love to see where that commission goes next. We also talk about Dignity Health, since the UC Regents are planning on working with them, but they are very non-trans inclusive and very non-inclusive whatsoever about the rights of people who want to marry the same sex. So we basically talked about whether UC Regents are going to endorse it or not, and right now it's up in the air, so we'll be working with them in the coming months. The sexual violence, sexual harassment policy, we talked about the actual the questionnaire that students are supposed to fill out, when they're trying to get an understanding about the student culture of sexual harassment on campus and be able to get the climate of that. So we basically just talked about the fact that the actual questionnaire wasn't really trauma informed. It wasn't asking the right questions to be able to get an accurate description, a reflection of what sexual violence looks like on different campuses. So we'll be working with UCOP to redo that questionnaire and also to create a questionnaire for grad students, because currently there isn't anything that can help grad students create that climate analysis process for them when they are talking about what sexual violence is like in the grad world. So we'll be establishing both of them. We talked about the May revise. Governor Newsom is going to be approving or not approving some funds. Right now he's allocated, UC has asked for $15 million. I'm going to be done. For $15 million for mental health services, basic needs services. And so right now what we're looking to do is split up that $15 million, $7.5 million will be going to every UC equally, and the other $7.5 million will kind of be going in an equitable way. Last time the housing funds, when we allocated the housing funds, it was more based off how many Pell Grant recipients each campus has and the need of the students on those campuses. This is going to be a very similar kind of allocation. So if anyone has any questions about that, you can talk to me after it gets approved in May. And lastly, the basic needs security. We talked about what does the Global Food Initiative look like now that it's expiring? And since our student regent, Devin Graves, established a special committee on basic needs, how does the president foresee her relationship to the oversight of this committee? And it stands on Senate Bill 50. If y'all haven't heard about Senate Bill 50, please make sure you're aware of it. Senate Bill 50, Senate Bill 392, and Senate Bill 63. Please make sure you research those and are aware of those bills. Those are critical legislation about talking about multiple issues, from basic needs to police, the policy on deadly force and how police operate on that. So just make sure you're aware of that, and if y'all want to pass resolutions on that, then we can do so in the next meeting. And then prioritizing the needs of students and workers. It's important that we, as presidents, continue to show our support for ASME workers. And we talked about where we are at. I already gave you an update that they have not moved the needle whatsoever. President Napolitano suggested that students, to help mediate the situation, encourage workers to come to the negotiating table. I don't know how anyone feels about that, but I just wanted to relay that message over in case y'all wanted to know. If anyone has any questions about these meetings, wants to get a more detailed description about any of these certain subjects, or if anyone has a message for President Napolitano and would like to create some kind of way to get that kind of communication going, please let me know, and we can touch base after the meeting, right?
Quick temperature check on people wanting to hear more about this next week.
No.
I am seeing mostly no or neutral and a few positive. Yeah,
I would request that the president submit a written.
My president report of April, so I upload them at the end of the show.
Lastly, please remember to confirm with your spaces about SOFA and about other things we talked about this week. And make sure that we consider all the SOFA requests. Thank you all.
Elections commissioners, please.
Meeting adjourned at 9:41.